What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with another 12-inch mix on the compilation provided by great friend Joseph. Indeed, the second compilation of 12-inch mixes that we've had from him. And this one, I am very pleased to note, he titled KROQ and More. Now, again, many of you will know what that refers to, but just in case there's some of you here who don't, in Southern California there's a radio station, KROQ, or K-Rock as it's known. And in the 80s, it was one of the few stations over here that was playing a lot of new wave, synth pop, and like UK and European music at a time when a lot of other American radio stations weren't playing that and were playing, again, like American soft rock and pop rock and so on. Now, because I have an older sister and older brother, I grew up listening to K-Rock, and because of that, I was immersed in some musical circles that I probably would not have been had I not had older siblings, and it's how I became a fan of Depeche Mode and eventually Erasure and other groups. So yes, K-Rock for me is a very special radio station, even though now it's like the broadcasting is different. They actually have a stream online. It's like K-Rock of the 80s. And they play the music that they played back in sort of this golden era of K-Rock. So I enjoyed that Joseph called the CD that on the actual disc. In any case, we're going to listen to a tune called Killer. It's a remix, as it's listed, by Adamski featuring Seal. I was curious because I had seen the name Adamski or Adamski. I don't know how you pronounce it. But I had seen that somewhere, so I did a little poking around online, and as Joseph says here, where he writes that this is a 1990 tune considered early acid house, I discovered that he was an English DJ and producer who was very much plugged into the late 80s rave scene and who was sort of an acid house pioneer, and it mentioned that this tune is maybe the one he's most noted for, which features Seal, which, if I'm thinking of the singer that is famous under that name, then I know who that is. And what's that song? The Kiss from a Rose on a Grave or whatever? I know I'm misquoting that. But yeah, I remember that song being a big hit, and I've seen him around in the musical world even in more recent years. But there's another tune apparently he made, which is considered a notable like acid house landmark, which is like NRG. So yes, ultimately I am keen to hear an early acid house track. And I've mentioned before, you know, I joined the rave scene mid-90s, started going late 96, and by that time acid house wasn't as big of a genre, still ongoing, still there, but yeah, I got really involved in acid techno and acid trance, which were essentially like progeny genres of acid house. So as I've gotten older, I have been keen just to get a sense for the acid house that predated a lot of the genres that I, as a teenager in the 90s, would get into more directly. In any case, let's give this a listen. It's a track called Killer, and it's shown here as being a remix by Adamski featuring Seal, and as I said, it's from 1990. Recognize Seal's vocal. Little acid gurgle.
Kids can only lead to no good. Besides, all the sons and daughters already know how that feels.
So many comments to make sonically. I know I'm not going to remember them all, but let me try to jump right into it. So we'll start with the percussion. Number one, again, it has what my brain hears as kind of a classic acid house kick drum, and a lot of the percussive elements, like those double time claps, the like bell or chime rhythms, that sort of like wood tap rhythm, which I really do associate with some acid house tunes that I'm familiar with a couple years after this. That stands out. The strong snare drum, which again, in genres that I would become more directly involved with, acid techno, acid trance, and hard trance, and so on, it's usually a clap on every other, not a snare. But I do note the force of the snare here in that, like every other rhythm, so that stood out too. But all sorts of little layers, like little electric touches and pulses, a couple different configurations of that, a little dancing like piano style keyboard line, these like synth choral vocals that kind of really stood out right at the end there, and not only that, heavy electric synth bass, which really stood out in a couple moments where the track cleaned up and got a lot more minimal or stripped down, but also that sort of recurrent acid gurgle, as I mentioned, halfway through or so. And it's funny because there's acid house where the acid is like a stronger element. Here it's like really kind of minimal and supportive, and it's interesting because again, genres that I follow and that, still to this day I'm buying records within acid trance, or maybe more so acid techno these days. Acid trance, as we knew it in the 90s, it doesn't really exist the same way anymore. Every once in a while, a record that is sold under an acid trance or acid techno label will come out and it's like, oh, that's kind of like throwback acid trance. Anyway, the point is, those tunes, the acid is a way more prominent element, like distorted acid work, acid layers just up and down all over the track. Here, it's more like part of the overall sonic palette, but I think it does give the track a bit of twistedness, a bit of gurgle, so I enjoy that as well. And yeah, definitely the tune, it's very kind of old school acid house as my brain hears it, but I imagine in 1990 this would have been, like very forward looking. It would have been like, wow, this is not like, even something like Acid Tracks by Future, which many people regard as kind of the real godfather of acid house, the one that like gave it a name, the one that, spawned interest from some UK artists where it would eventually flourish even more significantly than it did in Chicago. My understanding is that, or not my understanding, my hearing of this tune is like, it sounds more evolved than that. It sounds like it would have been something very new in its time and place in 1990. Now, knowing this is a remix, I was listening and I was thinking like, I'm so immersed in all these sonics I'm hearing, and Seal's voice sounds very nice, and I would, Solitary Brother, Solitary Sister, like about still being, do you still want to kill or whatever it is, like, I'm wondering about that line, and there was a bit at the end where we got some, like a fuller stanza or something, but I almost was like, the lyrics were kind of an afterthought, because all the sonics had mesmerized me and made me focus so much that I wasn't really thinking about the narrative. I wonder the original version of the tune, maybe the lyrics and the vocals are more pervasive throughout the track, and so maybe the scene or the narrative or the question being asked by the lyrics would stand out more, but I really was keying in mostly on the sonics, though to be fair, like Seal's voice was part of that. Certainly his voice gave the tune a sort of elegant sheen over the top of this, acid house dance floor kind of configuration. So yeah, definitely a cool tune, and one where, for a tune in 1990, there's a lot going on. It's not a simple tune. There's a lot of sonic layers in this one, so I was very impressed. Once again, big shout out to Joseph. Thank you not only for the music and the enthusiasm, but also the patience. You are very, very greatly appreciated. When we come back next time, it'll be a tune by Shannon from 1983 called Let the Music Play, an extended 12-inch mix, and as Joseph says, it combines the 303 and the 808, which, the 303, people who know this channel will know my reverential feelings for it, and eventually, the hardware and software clones designed to emulate it. But the 808, it's, a number of tunes that I know going back to the 90s use the 808. Now, fair to say, in some genres I listen to, acid techno, gabber, and hardcore, 909, like that's the drum machine that really becomes the go-to drum machine. But the 808, I understand, it has its own significant legacy. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that a little bit more when we get there. Let me know what you think of this, and I'll see you next time. Peace.